Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back. So now I'm going to be, since we're done with the other books, which were the more chapter style, I'm just going to be reading one picture book a day, every Tuesday and Thursday, and I'll give you a little prompt if you want to use this as your online art remote learning activity. So every Tuesday and Thursday, one storybook. And this is Vivienne Westwood. It's this beautiful book series called Little People, Big Dreams. And they have a few artist ones, especially women artists, and a lot of other influential, positive people in our culture, both dead and alive, who are doing great things or did great things. So Vivienne Westwood, we're going to learn about her, and the first little sort of intro page thingy, the book cover, I like to show this because it's got like all these little buttons. She was big in the punk rock culture of fashion, so you see lots of buttons with iconic type punk rock images, DIY and Let It Rock and Your Skull and Crossbones and Anarchy, Plaid. Vivienne Westwood. All right. Little Vivienne lived in a little town called Tintwistle in England. She was born during a Great World War, and where her mom darned her socks, and while her mom darned her socks, she dreamed of meeting the world. And darning socks is when they like fix the holes in socks. It's called darning. That's funny. Just little Vivienne, little sewing kit, a little baby doll with a plaid dress. And here's mom darning the socks, little baby, and then dad reading the news. I like looking for clues in the pictures, like the plaid dress on the baby doll. That feels like a throw to plaid in punk rock culture. All right, make sure I got this entered. At school, there was a boy all the children bullied. They called him Dirty Edward. But Vivienne didn't. She always stood up for the outsiders. She told everyone she was his girlfriend, even though it wasn't true. Dirty Edward over here. Poor boy. Probably didn't have it so easy at home and probably couldn't get his clothes cleaned in enough time. And those bullies made fun of him, but luckily Vivienne stood up for him. When Vivienne was older, her family moved to the outskirts of London. Vivienne was always curious about art and new ideas, so she decided to study fashion and jewelry design. So we see a young Vivienne over here in pink. Sorry, I can't tell where my hand is. We see a young Vivienne starting her fashion design, pinning up clothes on the mannequin form. Making a living as an artist was difficult, so Vivienne pursued a career in teaching. She liked being a teacher, but her head and heart were elsewhere. So you see her going by the window display with her students, and her heart and head are stuck looking at that. One day, she met a rebellious young man named Malcolm McLaren. They opened a shop on the King's Road in London, where they mixed rock and roll records with fashion in a brand new way. Vivienne took apart old clothes from the 1950s to create new designs. She started ripping the garments before threading them with safety pins and writing shocking statements on every shirt. So you see, like they're saying she would rip apart clothes and sew them back together and put safety pins on it and put statements that might have been very shocking at the time. Now it probably wouldn't shock you too much, but back then it did. Clothes became her way to speak out and protest. Bands Bands took notice, and soon she was dressing musicians with chains and collars. Her style was loud and chaotic as the new sound in town. Punk was as loud and chaotic as the new sound. Punk. So a lot of punk rockers were into that fashion. You can see all the safety pins and chains and spiky hair, denim. With their next collection, Vivienne and Malcolm sailed away from King's Road and docked on the catwalk. They plundered ideas from the past and dressed models as pirates and buccaneers. It was an anti-fashion revolution. After years together, Vivienne felt it was time to go her own way and said goodbye to Malcolm. She was about to change the shape of women's clothes with her corsets and bubble skirts. So a corset is this, what women used to wear to make themselves look like they had a tinier waist back in the day, which by the time Vivienne was making clothes, they weren't popular, so she was kind of bringing them back. Better or worse. Many critics found Vivienne's clothes unwearable, but she was not interested in their opinions. She would much rather read a good book than any fashion magazine. Which is funny because she's got all the fashion magazines over here and here. She's got them, but she's reading a book. Vivienne mixed punk and aristocracy, making the poor look rich and the rich look poor. She dressed artists, actresses, and even some members of royalty. The aristocracy, making them look poor. Kind of ironic. Vivienne became an activist against climate change. She made quality clothes that were built to last, encouraging people to buy less and wear them more, which is really big and important now. I think we have a very disposable fashion economy where we buy cheap clothes because they are affordable, but then, they get holes and tear faster because they're a cheaper quality, and we get rid of them, and then they just become garbage. So she was acting out against that, protesting. And little Vivienne, who always stood up for the outsiders, became the most unique and outspoken fashion designer ever. All because she believes that those who dare to speak up can change the world. Throwback to her as a kid with all her little fashion movements being represented there with the punk rock torn and safety pin clothing to the corsets and bubble skirts to the pirate fashion. So very fun. And then the book goes in to give us a little timeline. So I will read this, and then I think it might work well to, after I read this, to throw up some pictures of her work. So, or while I'm reading this. All right. Vivienne Westwood is one of the most famous and outspoken fashion designers in the world. She was born in the north of England to a family with a long history of shoemaking, but there were no other signs of the future fashion icon Vivienne would grow to become. When she was 17, her family moved to Harrow on the outskirts of London. There, she worked at a local factory and trained to be a teacher while making jewelry on the side, selling it at a little stall on Portobello Road in London. However, her life changed when she met a man named Malcolm McLaren. She was suddenly introduced to a world of art, politics, and freedom. Together, they opened a clothes shop at number 430 King's Road in London. Vivienne designed clothes for sale, emblazoning shirts with shocking statements, ripping up fabric, and using everyday objects like safety pins as decoration. She created a new style based on being nonconformist. Their shop became an important place for the punk movement in the 1970s, and Vivienne clothed the most famous punk bands of the time. I'm thinking, like, off the top of my head, Sex Pistols was probably one of them. Vivienne eventually left Malcolm and established her own identity as a fashion designer. She created a fashion empire with key pieces that revolutionized traditional fabrics and styles like tartan, tweed, crinoline, corsets, and knitwear. Vivienne is also a passionate climate change activist, believing that fashion can make a difference in the world. Her motto is to buy less, choose well, and make it last. In 2006, she was made Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire and has since been described as the Coco Chanel of our day. She now designs clothes to make people feel grand and strong, whoever they are. Very nice story. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Vivienne Westwood, the Coco Chanel of our day, and our little nonconformist punk rock fashion icon. All right. See you Thursday.